if you're not staying on top of your labor, if you're not staying on top of your food costs, you can very easily have a restaurant that's busy and losing money. Don't do it unless you are ready to really be invested, unless you have a deep love and connection. It's got to be more than like, that sounds fun or that sounds cool, because it's about so much more than that. And it's just everything. He's snapping his fingers at me. Miss, can we get this? Miss, can we get that? And he tells the waitress, I don't know who that girl is, but she's terrible and you need to fire her.
All right, Lesley Holloway, welcome to Tales from the Shift. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm so excited to have you on here, a small restaurant owner. I know I've thought about opening up and doing something, so I'm really interested in the fact that you went ahead and did it. Why don't you just start us off? How did you end up as a restaurant owner? Tell us the background of it.
Well, so this particular restaurant is very near and dear to my heart. This is where I had my very first job ever. When I was in, it's actually the summer after eighth grade. So I wasn't even quite in high school yet. And it's a big part of my hometown. So I'm in Dallas, and this is in a small East Texas town about an hour and a half from where I live. I worked there until I left to go to college. The owners were just really supportive of me. They helped me a lot. It was really helpful. Just I was raised by a single father. My mom had passed away when I was 10. So this restaurant kept me out of trouble. It kept some money coming in. It was useful to me for buying all the things that, a young girl needs in high school. And it taught me so much. And then I continued on in college waiting tables. I actually um, then went to law school and waited tables and bartended. So I've been connected to the restaurant industry for a while before I started my legal career. And then this particular restaurant, like I said, it's just it's a staple in our community. It's in a hardware store that has been in the town since 1899. So it has a very long history. After COVID, my owners had sold to someone else who my dad was very good friends with, and then he was getting older, and he sold it to one of the waitresses that worked there. And COVID was just so hard on her and the restaurant, and it was really in danger. And I looked at it and I said, and I took a friend down with me and I said, I'm thinking of buying this. And she said, are you crazy? This place needs so much work. And I was like, yeah, but I think I can do it. And so that's how I ended up buying it. I just reached out to her, and everyone knew my history with the restaurant. And so there was, a lot of people working to make it happen, because I had such a connection to the town and to the restaurant.
Very, very cool. So you are an attorney,
I am an attorney
and
currently.
that
Mhm.
wasn't enough work for you to deal with to just to, like, throw a restaurant on this.
No. Well, yeah, I tell people, often, because I get this question about, how do you do this? How do you run this law firm? Because I manage my firm and own this restaurant, and I'm not just an owner and investor in it. I mean, I'm there with my children. It is a very important place to me. I'm talking to my manager daily. Um, but I often tell people there's just something wrong with me. It's just I have to always have something to do. It is like I'm always looking for, another thing to uh work on. I'm just a worker bee at heart, I
Yeah,
think. And so
yeah.
the idea of just sitting around and relaxing sounds good for a short time, but then I'm kind of like, okay, what's next?
Okay, at this point, I'd like to read from Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidence. Never done this before, and I'd like you to tell me your opinion of this. To want to own a restaurant can be a strange and terrible affliction. What causes such a destructive urge in so many otherwise sensible people? Why would anyone who has worked hard, saved money, and often been successful in other fields want to pump their hard earned cash down a hole that statistically at least will almost surely prove dry? Why venture into an industry with enormous fixed expenses? Rent, electricity, gas, water, linen maintenance, insurance, license fees, trash removal, etc., with a notoriously transient and unstable workforce and highly perishable inventory of assets. The chance of ever seeing a returning investment are about 1 in 5. So, what are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts. Mr. Bourdain was a very, very smart man. um, yeah, I think he's right. I mean, I feel like it's such a hard industry, and people often, I think, romanticize it and don't realize how difficult it actually is on the day to day. And I think it's one of those things too, unless you've actually worked in a restaurant and done all of the jobs in a restaurant, you can't really comprehend how challenging it is. Um, and what makes people want to do it, just love for food or love for service, or, in my case, I felt like I was in a position to save something that was so dear to our community. I mean, this is a place that my dad went for coffee every morning and sat around a round table with all of his friends and drank coffee and solved the world's problems. And there's just not a whole lot of institutions like that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't want to see, some private equity snatch up the real estate and turn it into something different. And so for me, it was about saving a little piece of my town and saving a little piece of small town America. And I just felt like, because that community and because that restaurant had given so much to me, it was sort of my duty almost to give back, because I'm in the position to be able to give back. So I think at the heart of it is just love. You have to love something about it so much that you're willing to sacrifice and put yourself, through the rigors of all of what he described, and still try to make it work.
Yeah, very cool. Do you think there's a disconnect in people's minds as to what you do every day running a restaurant versus the things you actually deal with?
Well, yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, I had very early on someone leave a negative review about me being just an owner, and thinking that I had just kind of bought this for my own ego or something. Um, and that is probably the first thing from the truth. I mean, why why put myself through what you have to put yourself through in order to own a restaurant if it was just about investment or ego? And look, there's certainly a role for that. I think in the restaurant world, there are people that are just investors, um, that sit on the sidelines and just say, "Look, I have this money," and they leave it up to someone else, a chef or someone. But most of these small restaurants, no, the owners and are in it. They're in the day to day, and so I think, you're dealing with everything from broken toilet seats to, you know, uh, surging gas prices, and how do you deal with that? And, um, you know, a door that won't open that's gotten stuck. I mean, just, so many little things that are problematic on the day-to-day basis. It isn't just about, preparing food and getting it out the window. There's a lot of other things that go along with it.
Yeah. If you can think back to when you first started the restaurant or before you even got it, was there a vision in your head as to how it would be that is any different from the way it is?
Of course, because I think that if I had known, it's one of those things where if you know everything up front, you probably wouldn't do it, because it's so difficult and so challenging that you almost have to dive in without knowing all the problems you're going to face. Um, So, yeah, I think that part of me was a little, had a little bit of rose-colored glasses on, thinking I'm gonna come in and clean everything up, and it's all gonna, um, be smooth sailing because I have the best intentions, and because I have the best intentions, it's all gonna work out. But, for example, when I took over, so it's 2 buildings, it's a restaurant, and then on the other side is the hardware store, and they had tried to turn it into, like, an event venue, and, I immediately shut that down to renovate it, and it is still under renovation, and I thought that would be a 6-month project, and here it has turned into a year and 6 months of trying to get the hardware store renovated, inventoried, reopened. So while the restaurant is running, we are, trying to tackle this other project, and I just thought that that was gonna go much smoother and faster, and I don't know why, but I don't know why I thought that.
So you own the hardware side also?
Yes, I bought the
Oh,
entire 2 buildings. So it's really in a historic downtown area, and, the hardware store and the restaurant are 2 buildings. My owners actually purchased the space next door, and they were the ones that enclosed it, made it a full service restaurant. So before, it was just a deli in a hardware store, and so they expanded it, and so now I have the entire thing.
okay, okay. Here's an image of the outside of the restaurant, and so you're saying next to it you have the hardware. I guess I could have called this hardware store owner up, so I didn't
Yeah.
realize
Well,
you were dealing with
no.
both.
The hardware store's been sitting there for a year and a half unopened, and the restaurant has been running daily 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., 7 days a week since I bought it. So we only close for Christmas Day, I think, and a few other major holidays, but yeah, so it's restaurant has been the primary focus for sure.
All right. Okay. Um, how about this? Why don't you walk us through a typical day if you could? And maybe it's not typical very often, but the very beginning of your day, you walk in, what time you going in, who you dealing with, what are the typical challenges you might run into and all that?
Well, so when I get there, the first thing I do is check in with everybody. Uh, and then just kind of see, everybody has their roles. We've got cooks, we've got a dishwasher, we've got servers, we've got host bussers. And I have a manager that is there, full time. So when I'm going in, I am checking in with everyone, seeing where we might be, and then immediately sort of seeing where we might be having problems for the day. And that's the thing with a restaurant, the problems shift daily. I have walked in the door, and first thing I'm greeted with was, our dishwasher's not working. Something had happened. So it's immediately trying to get a hold of the company and um, problem solve that. So it and that varies from day to day, whatever the issue is. Our Ventahood has not worked before. That shorted out. So we're calling the electrician. And those are kind of major problems. Or you just may have minor problems like kitchen has gotten backed up. And, orders our ticket times are running 15, 20 minutes instead of, 10 to 15 minutes. And so it's really problem solving, I feel like, no matter what I'm doing when I walk in the door. Um, and when I come there, I sort of have the attitude that I'm ready to jump in and help with whatever to make it run smoothly for the day. So I am not there to, and, I think a lot of owners of small restaurants or small town restaurants, um, are like this. I mean, you are problem solving things, but you're also, if the dishwasher's getting behind, you're jumping in and helping the dishwasher. If the kitchen is behind, you're jumping in and helping the cooks. If the food's having problems getting out the door, you're running food. You're bussing tables. You're whatever is really needed because um you're really just there to make sure everything runs smoothly. And really whatever is needed. That's my attitude. What are we, I mean, because ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish? A smooth service for your guests,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People are coming in the door to eat, and you want to make sure they have a good experience so they come back. So it's really about whatever you need to do to make that experience for that day a good one. So you get your customers coming back.
So would you say labor is one of your main expenses, or where would
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I mean, labor is gonna be one of the biggest costs, and then next would be your food costs.
I want
So
to show
those
this
are
image real quick on the screen. So this is your BLT. And then I just want you to comment on all of these costs that actually go into making this BLT. I mean, obviously, I don't know if these numbers are a little inflated, but the concept is still there. What do you think about when you look at these costs?
yeah, it kinda hurts. I'd say the owner draw is not accurate because right now, I feel like everything is going back into the restaurant, and particularly because we're renovating, everything's going back into the renovation. So, yeah, I mean, food costs and labor, and in particular, food costs are are worrisome right now, given just the state of the world. We're talking about, I get fuel surcharges on my food delivery now because so
Mm,
that's an added cost. The tariffs have changed this. My coffee, for example, I serve coffee at $1.50. Um, and I have contemplated many times going up on that cost because my cost for the coffee has more than doubled, almost tripled since I bought the restaurant in 2024, um, due to tariffs and rising costs and yeah. So uh if food costs and labor, yeah. I mean, luckily I own the building, but the utilities, absolutely. Insurance I think is higher than 2% at this point. Insurance rates are skyrocketing. The credit card fees are that's pretty typical. Um Repairs, yes. There's always something in a restaurant that needs to be repaired. So, yeah, I'd say this is, pretty accurate, but honestly, I'd say that owner draw is much less given gi given the rate at which things have increased. And look, I know that I'm not the only one feeling that. I mean, everybody's feeling that right now. But, yeah, it's a very tough industry.
do you have any physical marks, habits, stress responses, tattoos, anything that your body carries from being in the restaurant industry?
Oh, I mean, I have some burns. I definitely have
Yeah.
some I wanna I have a scar on my hand from actually when I worked there in high school. I remember I was reaching into the oven to get baked potatoes out for one of those steak nights that I mentioned and, burned my hand pretty badly. Um, so I think that's par for the course, and if you're working in a kitchen ever, you're gonna end up with a few scars. Um, but stress responses, I'm not, I think, and I don't know, you hear if you were to talk to a chef in a Michelin star restaurant, you're going to see and I think experience a very different type of personality than what I'm giving. Um, you know, from what I see and what I know, and I mean, even to an extent at some of the places that I have worked, um, it's not as extreme as something like I don't know if you've seen the menu where they're clapping. It's like, yes, chef.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I've
I,
seen that.
I, ha- I, I have worked in a restaurant that was a very yes, chef type of mentality. Obviously, not to that extreme because that movie's pretty dark. But when you're talking about mom and pop sort of small town America, that's going to be a very different experience. So a stress response from a chef in that setting, I think would be very different than what I do. My way to deal with stress in any scenario, I think, is just to dig in and get to work. I think that, I really believe that action is the antidote to anxiety. So if I feel like things are starting to, spin out of control or we're getting behind, it's just, focus on the next order, focus on getting the next thing done, getting that food out, focus on solving sort of one problem at a time. My motto is everything is figure outable. And I have a little sticky that I keep on my computer at the law office, that says everything is figure outable. I don't dare move it. I would have brought it for show and tell today, but I just don't move it because it's like I need it to stay right there. And when I'm feeling that overwhelm response come over my body, I just think to myself, I look at that sticky, everything is figure outable. I can figure this out. There's a way to problem solve this.
Hey, quick timeout. If you made it this far in the video, then you must like it at least a little bit. If that's the case and you want to see more, then please like and subscribe, and I'll keep bringing you this content. And it helps YouTube figure out that people actually like this, and they'll send people this way, and we'll grow. With your help, I really appreciate that. Thank you. How about horror stories? Anything other than the bad review that the guy wrote, or your problems with things breaking down? Any other horror stories that you've run into and trying to run this?
I mean, I try to take all of those just with a grain of salt. I mean, when you're dealing with the restaurant industry, you're always going to get people that are kind of unhappy. I did have one not long ago that I mean, gosh, I laugh at myself a lot. So it's not that it's funny, but for me, it's just like if I don't sort of try to find humor and levity in every situation, then I feel like, we would all go mad. So I was there and I kind of had jumped in. And we were just really busy. What happens often is that everyone walks in the door all at once. And we actually had a full restaurant and we had two or three people standing waiting, and one of the guys that was there that was waiting with his family, I mean, he just looked mad from the get go. Just a mad look on his face, just unhappy to be there, just like angry. And I was like, oh, this guy already. And of course, I just, put on my best smile and I was like, let me wipe this table off for y'all and I'll get you seated, right away. And um, have him sit down. And it's just everything. He's snapping his fingers at me. Miss, can we get this? Miss, can we get that? And,
There you
I
go.
am trying I'm trying to not I'm trying to do my best to not tell this guy just to get out of my restaurant, uh, but, I had gone to a table next to him and I was, pulling plates, so I didn't realize there was, like, a salsa that had, kinda gotten stuck under there, and it fell on the floor, and salsa kinda jumps up and it really didn't go up on the table. I think it splattered more on the floor, but this guy, he insisted it went into his tea. He was just, furious about that now. And he tells the waitress, I don't know who that girl is, but she's terrible and you need to fire her. And I was like,
Your
I was
waitress
like,
probably loved it.
oh
Yes.
yeah, she was like, she was laughing. She was like, yeah, that guy. She's like, well, that's the owner, so I don't have the authority to fire her, but it's just one of those things. Sometimes you're just going to get those people that you're not going to make them happy no matter what, or they kind of come in the door with looking for something to be wrong, and if they do, they're going to find it. I mean, it's a hard business. Things go wrong sometimes, accidents happen. Certainly nobody at that restaurant goes into their shift or, you know, starts waiting tables thinking, I'm going to have a bad shift today, or I want to have bad service, or I want to give bad service. Nobody thinks that, we're all there trying to do our very best every day. Um, so I guess that's my most recent horror story.
I like that you said y'all. I remind me. I was born in San Antonio, so you kind of remind me of being back home. I don't hear y'all in Chicago very often.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have as if you go out to East Texas, there's a big accent out there, and, I went to school for acting. I got a BFA in acting, um, and one of the first things they teach you in acting school is to try to get rid of that accent as much as you can. You wanna sound more Midwestern,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely say y'all, that's I'm still a Texan.
Nice. Maybe we should explain on here when people order a Coke, they don't necessarily mean a Coke.
Right. Oh, that's a whole conversation. Yeah,
I'd like a Coke. What kind do you want?
yeah. Cokes are not just Cokes here.
Have you ever felt unsafe at all in this career? Crime, anything like that with the restaurant, everything? Anybody ever cause a problem there?
Very early on, we had 2 pretty severe problems. One was, someone was walking out the back door with inventory, food inventory. So I think, you know, you can definitely have people that are stealing from you in this industry. Um, Particularly like in this case, it was these what we do tuna salad there. So we get these large cans of tuna that are not cheap. I mean, they're like $70 for this can of tuna. And I was talking to my manager and I was going through and looking at the inventory and I was like, "Oh, we're short on tuna." And she's like, "No, we're not." And this is when it sort of we discovered that people were walking out the back door with inventory, or a particular person was. So, had to deal with that. Um, we
You
had a
must
person.
really like tuna to steal a thing of tuna that big.
I know, I know.
I don't think there's a black market for selling off a giant can of tuna.
Well, I don't know. But, I mean, I have heard about it with steaks, people stealing steaks from restaurants. I have I I wasn't there when it happened, but we had someone we let go who showed back up and was people felt very unsafe in that situation. We had someone who had um um, they were a diabetic and had an issue with their diabetes and sort of freaked out, and it sort of scared a lot of other staff. So, I mean, you're still dealing with a lot of people and a lot of personalities. So, um, I've never had I did have a customer who very early on we had a television in there and I got rid of it because it just wasn't the vibe that I wanted. I really wanted, like I said, my dad sat around the table and talked with his buddies and I really wanted to sort of get it back to that where you're not coming in to just, watch something that's on a screen. You're because it's such a small restaurant. So we took that TV out immediately. And this one customer who comes in, he still comes in, but he came in and he just started screaming and cussing at the top of his lungs about that TV being gone. And, you know, he got over it and he comes back and now he watches TV on his phone. But, but, particularly I think in small towns, it's tough because people sort of get used to getting catered to, unlike a chain restaurant. So, they have like their special order that they want to order, and the previous owner had been very accommodating to people, a little too accommodating, in my opinion. Um, but was doing like very special off menu things for all these people, and people had gotten very used to that. And so I guess he felt like he was entitled to come in and share his opinion very loudly with everyone about that television. So, you just see all kinds of things.
Is there any way that owning the restaurant has affected your outside life, your family, your law practice, anything at all?
um, sure. I mean, to say no, it hasn't affected it at all would be so disingenuous. I think that uh it has changed what my weekends look like very often because I'm out there. Um, I think in a positive way, it has opened up a new perspective for my children because they go with me out there and they have bus tables and they have washed dishes and they have greeted people and they love to, of course, they love to get on the POS system, check people out and put in orders and all of that because that's technology. um, but yeah, it's opened up a lot for them. It's you know, with the law practice, I really have to focus more. If you want to do this type of business or any type of business, I think, um, you can't be too distracted. And there's a lot of distractions in the world. So I don't have time to doom scroll on my phone. I don't have time to just get caught up in, um, the drama of the world, which I guess can be a good thing sometimes. But, you really just have to focus your energy where you want to see results. And so, it is difficult to balance all of it and maintain, friendships and family. But I try to think of that the four burner theory. It's just like you have four burners, and to be really successful, it's business or career, family, friends, and health. And so if you think of those as four burners, which I'm very visual, so this helps me. It's like, the guy who came up with it said if you want to be really successful, you have to turn off the other burners. And I don't think of it that way, but what I think of it is like when I'm at work for the law firm, I really wanna crank that burner up, right? My kids are in school, my friends are doing their own things, and so I'm really just focused on making sure that burner is getting its full attention right then. And maybe my health burner's on a little bit so I remember to like eat lunch or get up and walk around from my desk a little bit. But, and then when I'm done with the law firm and I come home and it's time to spend time with my family and kids, I want to turn that burner up. I want to make sure that I am turning off work and not thinking about the restaurant right then and really kind of just honing in on my kids and giving that quality over quantity sort of time. Because look, I could sit in a room with my kids all day, but if I'm scrolling on my phone 90% of the time, then I'm not really spending time with them. So for me, it's just like I want to turn up that family burner when I'm with my family. And then, the same with friends and health. I just try to just make sure when I do have time for other things that I'm really honing in on that time. And, even tell my friends, do you have time for a quick walk? Can we go do, a quick walk on the Katy Trail? Or, do you want to grab a coffee or do you want to grab a glass of wine or whatever, something quick. Just to sort of fuel that area of my life. So maybe it's just made me more aware of my time or more focused with my time. And so I think, it definitely takes you away from being able to do, I can't just always pick up and go last minute and do things because I've got to attend to the restaurant. Um, but at the same time, I guess just being more intentional. It's made me be more intentional with my time.
Yeah. How many hours of sleep a night you get?
No, I get like 7.
Okay. All right.
I'm good. I'm good with 7 hours, like everybody's different, but I feel like my body's sorta good with 7 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Is there anything cool or enjoyable that you found about being a restaurant owner that you were surprised about after you got involved with it? Like a benefit to it?
I think, what I was kind of nervous about, but what I was surprised about was how supportive the community was, because I wasn't really sure how a lot of people were going to feel about me coming in and buying this place. In fact, I know there were some people that reached out and were like, "Kitchens mean so much. Please don't ruin it." Um, it means a lot to people in the town. So I felt like there was a lot of pressure, but I've been really pleasantly surprised with how supportive everybody has been. Um, I have people coming back in there that haven't been there in years, just because it had, like I said, it really suffered during COVID and kind of had gotten to a place that people didn't even want to come anymore. Um, and so seeing people come back, reconnecting with people. I think what has been great is I've seen so many of my old teachers come in. I had a teacher come in and she said, "You don't remember me." And I said, "No, Miss Cagle, you were my third grade teacher." And she was like, "Oh," so excited that that I remembered her. I was like, "Of course I remember you." I remember her because she called my parents because I was not doing very well in her handwriting section of class, and she was displeased with my handwriting, and I'm a lefty, so, um, I would say I improved my handwriting quite a bit because of her. But yeah, I've seen her, I've seen, my English teacher from when I was a senior in high school, um, Miss Quattlebaum, Miss Abbott, my geometry teacher, my Texas history teacher comes in all the time, Mr. Phillips, and he's so sweet. My principal from when I was in elementary school, and he ended up teaching pre-cal, also Mr. Phillips, and they are related. He comes in quite often, so I think that's been kind of a wonderful happy surprise is being able to reconnect with so many people from just my childhood, just from growing up in the area. Um, and then getting to meet so many new I mean, I'm an introvert, I would say, but I do enjoy talking to people and I enjoy connecting with people. And so I think that's been a really nice part of being the owner is you have a reason to go up to people and talk to them and say, "Well, I'm the owner. I'm Leslie, and thanks for coming in. And I appreciate your feedback." And yeah, I think the connection with people has been a good thing.
Very cool. Nice. Okay, so it says here the James Beard Foundation and Deloitte reported that many independent restaurants have hit a practical limit on being able to raise prices. How do you feel about this with menu prices and customers that are already kind of squeezed? How do you play it? What do you think?
I think it's accurate. I think so. I think that we have reached a point. I mean, I was just talking about my coffee earlier. So we're at $1.50 and I could raise the price on my coffee and maybe I should. I've really wrestled with that. And I know it's so strange. In most places you go, you can't get a cup of coffee for less than $2. Um,
Well,
and
do you think that it's a loss leader in that maybe people come there because of that and then they're buying something else anyway?
yeah, I think that ultimately that's what it's come down to for me is I'm just leaving the price where it's at. When I first bought it, we did increase our prices a little bit, about 50 cents a menu per menu item for the most part. Um, but yeah, I think you're at a point where, I mean, particularly right now with the economy, um, it's just if you keep raising prices, you're not going to have people coming in, um, particularly in a small town, also. I mean, it's just that's a different market versus someplace like Dallas or Chicago or New York, right? I mean, you've just got a different market there. But I think you are kind of at a point where if you if you continue to raise your prices, people just aren't going to be able to afford it. They're just not going. They're just going to look for cheaper options. So I think practically we are at our limit. I can't imagine raising my prices any more than what they are right now. When I first started there, gosh, 1994, a sandwich and chips was $4.95, and that I mean I don't know where you can find a sandwich and chips for $4.95 anymore. And now our sandwiches are in the $10 to $15 range for sandwich and chips. So, um, and that was a long time ago. I mean, this is 30 years ago now. So, um,
Yeah.
but still, if you keep increasing the prices, you're not going to have the customers.
Yeah. Well, but what percentage of restaurants would you say at this point are basically Cisco?
Oh my gosh. I mean, 90% probably.
Wow.
I mean, I, do, I, and that made me unfair, but I mean, I feel like it is just a lot of like who can take these, products and serve them the best. I mean, they're even doing so much pre-made stuff like, buy soups from them that are pre-made. So you're not even making the soup in-house anymore. Um, yeah, there is a lot of just pre-prepped stuff, and it's like, well, I don't that's not what I wanna sell in my restaurant. We make like, we take our biscuits, and when we have biscuits at the end of the day, we make a biscuit bread pudding with it, So it's more about, like, using strategy like that, so, like, instead of having biscuit waste, right, we're actually turning it into a dessert. Um and trying to find strategies like that, I think, versus, just buying a dessert from, Cisco, Benny, Keith, PFG, something like that, and saying, "Oh, look, we have this special dessert," but we didn't, if you do that, it's not homemade. It's just selling somebody else's product.
Are you familiar at all with the show The Bear? It's a restaurant
I
show.
am.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess there's a lot of if it's about a restaurant, a lot of debt and staff conflict and pressures and stuff. Would you say it's kind of accurate, inaccurate? What would you say about it?
Let me tell you about my experience with The Bear. So, I started watching it, and I got into the 1st season about, maybe it's like the 3rd or 4th episode in, and I loved it. I think it's a really accurate portrayal, I mean, of the struggles that you have within the restaurant industry, particularly from the staff. I mean, I feel like, you can run into complacency with people. Nobody's ever gonna care about your restaurant as much as you care about it. You kinda see that with the main character, but the reason that I couldn't watch beyond that episode is there's an episode where she's trying, and I forget her name, but she's kind of his, like, sort of partner, other chef that he brings in. She's trying to get like, an online ordering system going, and they flip the switch on it, and the tickets just start pouring out of this thing, these to-go orders, and they just won't stop. And, you've got one chef over here who's not paying attention, you've got another thing going on, and the owner, he starts losing his mind, and this gave me so much anxiety about all those people with all their unfilled orders. I just was like, I couldn't watch it beyond I, like, had this secondhand sort of anxiety from the show because and I will tell you, we implemented DoorDash with, my restaurant like, after about a year of ownership, and part of the reason it took me so long was because of that episode. I had so much anxiety about the idea of turning on the DoorDash and all these orders coming in and not being able to handle it and people being unhappy and, orders unfulfilled. At one point in the episode, he just takes that machine and just, like, rips it out of the wall and just throws it on the ground. I was just like, "Oh my god." Um, but I think, but now I feel like I'm in a place I do wanna go back and watch the rest of it because there's something in that show. I've kinda seen some snippets, online where, the brother goes and he works in another, like, more high-end restaurant, and I think they subscribe to, this idea of unreasonable, hospitality. It's a book um that this guy wrote about just being like so kind of going above and beyond. It's the fact that that like this particular person that comes into your restaurant always likes their steak medium rare. Or we do that to a certain extent. We have this guy that comes in every morning and they set his table for him because he's there at 7 a.m. and we always set his table, have it ready for him. And, so I do wanna go back and watch it from that perspective to see, like, how it evolves, and becomes better. I think I got through the entire 1st season. It's just I haven't watched beyond that. But I from what I saw and from what I felt that it was very accurate. I think it was an accurate portrayal.
Yeah, cool. And then Kitchen Nightmares, I've watched that personally a lot and watching all these failing restaurants. Have you seen this show?
Yes, I have.
Mm.
Um, those I mean, I feel like that one's a little heightened for television. I do think one of the things that I really like, there was a different show called Bar Rescue, and this is where they would come into a failing place and, revamp it and try to give it a little reset. And I like that. I like, trying to save something. I but those shows, I think they're pretty accurate with I think that people are just not anticipating or not really realizing how much work it's gonna be, and not realizing that if you don't keep your finger on it all the time in some way, shape, or form, it can easily go downhill. I mean, I always have to watch food costs. I always have to watch labor costs. I mean, the number of times I'm like checking to make sure they set the temperature to the right temperature so that AC is not running all night. I mean, it is just like if you don't keep your finger on these things all the time, it can very easily spin out of control. And I think that's what you see in those shows is like somebody has not stayed on top of something and it just has started to sort of the universe is not everything's not on its axis spinning normally. It has just gotten, so out of control. Everything's kind of out of whack and they don't know how to tighten it back up again. And that's what I think happens. But it's really if you don't stay on top of it, then it can very easily go there. But I see it at my law firm too. It's the same thing in that industry. If you I don't micromanage people because I really believe that if you have to micromanage someone, then you haven't adequately trained them. Um, but you'll have people that just stop doing something and you'll say, well, why did you stop doing that? And they'll say, well, I just didn't think I had to do it anymore. And so it's like, you're not sending out this letter to the client. Why aren't you sending this letter? Oh, well, I didn't think we really needed to send that letter. So I just stopped doing it. It's just like there are policies, there are procedures in place for everything, and they're in place for a reason. And I kind of approach the restaurant the same way. We have policies, we have procedures for everything, and all of those policies, procedures are in place for a reason. And I think that is how you keep something running efficiently is you can't just walk in and be like, "Oh, it's just gonna magically come together." You really have to give your people a plan and a direction, and you really have to have standard procedures for everything. Um, and I think that's one of the things that keeps it from becoming a kitchen nightmare or where you need somebody to step in.
Yeah. So here you are, you're putting your thumb on these things and keeping them under control. Is there anything that you can think of that it doesn't matter if you put your thumb on it or not that could come along that would cause failure? Like that's something that could just be out of your control. I mean, if it's something if you're spinning these plates, are you good because you're spinning the plates or could they still fall?
Well, I think absolutely they can still fall. I mean, I'd be fooling myself if I thought that I could handle every situation. I do believe everything is figure outable, but look, if we end up in a food shortage situation like the United States does, for example, because we can't get fertilizer to grow our crops. That is beyond my control. And if I can't get food, I can't get food. That is not something, no matter how hard I work, I can't work myself out of that problem because that problem is way bigger than I am. So, yeah, of course, there's things like that. Um, I went, my friend Tina, I love her. She wants me to be a skier so bad. Like I don't have time for a broken arm
Wow.
or a broken leg or I I just don't because like you said, I'm spinning so many plates and there are there's so much dependent on me that I just don't have time. I don't have time to be hurt. And because of that, I am a very fearful skier. And ultimately, I will not be a skier because it's just not in the cards. It's just not in the cards for me. Um, so earlier you asked the question like how does it affect your outside life? That's a good one right there.
Yeah.
That's a good way.
Yeah. No, you're like an elite athlete, you play for a hockey team or whatever, and you can't be going out and doing these things that could get you injured because you're going to affect the bottom line at the business. Sounds pretty similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it is in a way. It's like um but I'm also trying to put things into place. I do this for my firm, I do this for my restaurant. I'm also trying to put things in place. Like one of the things we're creating right now is an owner's SOP. So that if something does suddenly happen to me or I'm not able I could have somebody like pick up this manual and say, okay, here are all the things that need to be done to keep this place running because I am very cognizant of the fact that a lot of people's livelihoods are attached to this restaurant. Um and I feel responsible for that. So I think that it is important to have those systems and policies in place so that if I'm incapacitated for a time, it could still function at least for a little bit.
I think that's very noble because I could see a lot of people who they're doing this for themselves, right? And they'd be well, if I die, screw them. I don't let the thing die. They should run that restaurant if I'm not around anyway. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, Uh, yeah, I think that's true, and I think that there's because I think a lot of what people are doing with restaurant is ego, right? I think that you're seeing that with a lot of chefs in particular. I think that's why, um, some of those places can be a big challenge to work in. It's because, you know, a lot of chefs have a lot of ego. Um, and, a lot of owners have a lot of ego. And I think you do have to have a certain amount of it. I always, I supervise a lot of trial attorneys, and I used to go to trial myself. And I feel like in a lot of ways you have to walk a fine line between cocky and confident. Um, you want to be confident in what you're doing, um, but never cross that line into cocky, because then I think that's where your ego starts to take over and you don't do your best decision making. For my restaurant, it's not about me. And I think that that is maybe what's different with me owning the restaurant versus other people, is it's really not about me personally as much as it's about the restaurant, the community, and just having um, kind of a, I hate to say it, it sounds like a buzzword, like a heart for service. I think that, they talk a lot about servant leadership. You hear that a lot. And I just think I'm just the type of person that I can't make the whole world a better place. I can only try to make my little corner of the world a better place. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Awesome. Okay. Questions from the internet here. A lot of people are curious about whether a restaurant can be busy and still lose money. Could you explain how that would be a thing that you could have the whole place keeps getting customers, but it's still not good enough?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you're not staying on top of your labor, if you're not staying on top of your food costs, you can very easily have a restaurant that's busy and losing money. If you're letting staff get into overtime because you're not watching the clock, and your labor costs can get very high very quickly. And same with food. If you're ordering too much product and not keeping an eye on expiration and inventory and kind of constantly monitoring that, yeah, you can have people coming in the door all the time. But if your costs are exceeding what people are purchasing, then you're going to end up failing. And that's if you don't have good systems in place to make sure that you're checking those numbers all the time, it can happen. I mean, look, we're busy. We're very fortunate. The place is loved by the community. We have regulars during the week. We have the town is very good about promoting festivals and having events. So we get a lot of people that come in on the weekends. So having customers is not the issue. Um, the issue is, well, just stepping in, for example, I had to do a number of repairs. And if you let those things pile up and not, maintaining your property, your business, getting regular maintenance on things. If you don't get regular maintenance, then when the thing fails, it's instead of being, $100 in maintenance that you pay monthly, then all of a sudden it's $5,000 for a new, machine that you have to get done. Um, so yeah, you can have people walking in the door and all your profits are, going towards labor, food, repairs because you're not staying on top of it. So
Yeah.
absolutely,
Okay.
that can happen.
I know that you created a scholarship to honor your father. Why don't you tell us about that? What's it called? What's it about?
Well, so it's called the Curtis Holloway Memorial Scholarship. It's hosted on bold.org. It's about to close, actually. It closes, I usually do it, twice a year, and it closes on May 15th, and then we will award the scholarship on his birthday, which is June 16th. And I created it because, well, 1, I found myself in a position to really, give back, and 2, I just wanted to honor my dad. He did so much for me growing up. Like I said, my mom passed when I was 10, and they had divorced, so I wasn't living with him full time, and then all of a sudden I was, because it was very sudden. So, and he just, took it all in stride. He helped me through college, helped me through law school. He was just my go-to person when I had problems, needed to, you know, he dealt with everything from what do I do with this law firm problem to, oh, my heart's been broken and what do I do with that? And he just kind of had to deal with all of it. And he was a really amazing father. So, um, I keep my maiden name and I practice law under my maiden name because of him. So Holloway is my maiden name because I just really want to honor all his sacrifice that um, that he had to do to be a single father raising, raising this daughter all of a sudden. And the scholarship is just a way to honor him. It is primarily focused to people who have lost a parent or are being raised in a single parent household, and it's just to help with offset some of the costs of education because I think if I hadn't gone and gotten my education, my college degree, my law degree, um, I might not be in the position I am now. And I feel very grateful for where I am now.
What is your final advice for someone thinking of getting into restaurant ownership? Or if you want, you can answer the question, what's a secret about being a restaurant owner that people don't understand? Your choice.
My advice is it bad to say don't do it? No. Just,
Say whatever you want.
I if you're no, I mean I think that my advice would be don't do it unless you are ready to really be invested, unless you have a deep love and connection. It's got to be more than like that sounds fun or that sounds cool. I think it'd be cool to own a restaurant because it's about so much more than that. Um, it is about problem solving. It is about dealing with unhappy customers. It is about staffing and food and things outside of your control. So it can't just be like, oh, it sounds fun to own a restaurant. I'd really like to do that. Or, oh, my chicken marsala is so good. I should open a restaurant and sell this. It can't just be about that. um, you really have to have a love and a passion for it and a connection to it in some way. Um, and unless you have that, I don't think you're going to be happy doing it because it is so tough. You have to have something that keeps you going. And um and that, because it has so many challenges. You really have to have something bigger than just this sounds like a fun idea. And my advice would be to take it very if you do want to delve into it, to take it very seriously, to do your research, to go work in a restaurant. I mean, so many people are like, I want to own a restaurant and they've never worked in a restaurant a day in their lives. So if you want to own a restaurant, you need to have worked in a restaurant. You need to have, done everything in a restaurant. I mean, I the restaurant I worked in college, I was a head wait. I expedited, and that was a huge kitchen. That restaurant seated 1,000 people. So being in the kitchen, expediting food, calling for food, dealing with servers, being in different positions in the restaurant, I think you really have to do that. You really need to understand the inner workings of it before you decide you're going to dive in to something like
Great
this.
idea. Fantastic. All right. Okay, we're on the speed round now to wrap this
Okay.
up. All right. So, speed round, I'll read you some words and you can just tell me how you feel about them. You say you hate it, love it. You can speak for an hour about it if you really are called to. Um, I can tell you the speed round has been quite hit or miss. So if it doesn't work out, I promise you it's not your fault. Okay.
Okay.
No call, no show.
Ooh. Ugh. I hate that. I hate it.
All right. Vendor minimums, required order sizes that for purchasing. Is that a thing?
It is a thing, yeah. It's a thing on more of our hardware side, but yeah, it is. It is a thing, and I get it. Don't love it, but I get it.
The grease trap.
Oh, I mean, unfortunate. That would be my response. I mean, it's a part of cooking, right? You got to deal with it.
All right. Health inspections.
Oh, necessary. Come on. Like, I mean, nobody likes them, but do you wanna go to a restaurant that's filthy? No, come on. I
No.
don't. I don't
But,
wanna go to one.
but I mean, tell us, is it when they come in, is it unreasonable, the things there, or is it pretty easy to pass, or is it like you could fail by something that seems easily to miss, you know?
Oh, no. I mean, I actually really like our health inspector that comes in. She comes from a bigger town in Tyler, but no, it's not unreasonable. They want you to have your exit signs need to be lit. You need to make sure, you've got your safety protocol in place, that people aren't putting stuff in the hand washing sink when they shouldn't be. It's just cleanliness, right? I mean, any place you go that you're eating, you want it to be clean. I just don't, they're not looking for reasons to fail people, but they should fail you if you're not up to standards. Is my feeling on it.
Okay. All right. This may not have happened to you. POS outage?
Oh, yeah, that's happened. Um, and that is
Problem.
terrible. Yeah, everything shuts down. We didn't have a POS when I bought the restaurant. We were still doing hand tickets. We were still writing them and sticking them in the window and then, old school. And the POS is wonderful until it's not.
Bad online reviews.
Oh. I mean, obviously I hate them, but like if we fail at something, I hope people would here's some little advice, a little tidbit. Deal with it right then and there. Talk to the manager. I guarantee you nobody is really looking to give you terrible service or looking to, make sure you have a bad experience. Try to talk to the manager and see if they can make it right for you right then and there. Online reviews, particularly for very small businesses, it hurts so bad. These are um if it deters somebody from coming in just because it was one off day, I I just think you should really give the restaurant an opportunity to make it right. Or my other pet peeve is this, I will say, like somebody leaves a one-star review with absolutely no feedback. They just go on and they just leave a bad star and they give you no feedback. It's like we want to improve, we want to make it right. So only bad reviews in the most extreme of circumstances, I think.
1-star review. Never ate there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
which
literally had one from a lady. She said she didn't eat there. She said the menu looks terrible. That was her review. Was a bad online review because she thought the menu looked terrible. I'm like, come on. You didn't even come in and nobody's forcing you to come in, but you really needed to leave a bad review for that. Okay. Sorry, it's not your cup of tea. But
is there a procedure to remove a bad review if like it's nonsense, or it's, I don't know, talk about the wrong restaurant, or who knows?
unfortunately, there's really not. That's one thing I think that's bad about the online review system is there's not a good way to um, get bad reviews off. You really just have to ask for good reviews from other people to try to counterbalance a bad review. And luckily, like knock on wood, we get a lot of people who give us good reviews. But we don't always hit a bullseye. So occasionally we get some bad ones. I think what's really unfair is someone left a bad review about me on TripAdvisor, again saying that I had purchased the restaurant for my own ego. They called me a slave driver, which I thought was very unfair and pretty horrible. Accused me of breaking child labor laws because I had my children in there, which I which I'm like, I'm a lawyer, so I know about child labor laws and I'm not breaking them.
Wow.
Yeah, so sometimes it's just a matter of maybe somebody just doesn't like you personally. So
Wow,
yeah.
wow, wow, wow. Amazing. Okay, moving on. Food waste.
Oh, I hate it. I hate food waste in general. I'm just so I don't know. I'm like, I grew up with the clean your plate club. My parents were like, don't waste that. There are, starving children somewhere.
Well, that's it. I ran out. We're done. Okay. All right, Lesley Holloway, thank you so much for being on the Tales from the Shift and telling us everything about the restaurant business. I appreciate you coming on here and taking your time out from your day.
Thank you. Thank you. It was such a pleasure.